I was just like, oh, I'm just caught by surprise at your beauty.
I'm not gonna lie, I still am not feeling great. So we're
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah. So so just be forewarned that if I'm not totally like myself, that's the reason why. I just
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, thanks. Yeah.
That sucks. Oh,
But hey man, you look fantastic. What is it this like
thank you.
loving the makeup look?
Thank you. It was like 20 minutes worth of makeup. And again, I can't see any whoever is joining our live. I don't know why. It's so weird. I don't know what I touched, but I was that first time and now I'm like, I don't know who's in it with us. So hi. I am sorry I cannot welcome you.
Um
But yes, I sent you the agenda just now. I'm so sorry. I honestly got caught up with work, but oh well. Like it's weird doing it on a Wednesday, not gonna lie. But the like alternative was for me to do it with someone else or by myself, and I was like, no, I cannot talk at people. Like I can, obviously, but I don't want to. Not for half an hour or more. So
yeah.
but yeah, how are you apart from like the migraine?
Honestly, I'm doing good. I'm doing like
Good.
really good. I'm like celebrating small wins today. So like
Good. Okay.
yeah, it's like I mean, we're still like rolling with it, right? Whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
How about you? What's like something that you're really proud of today?
Oh
Aside
God.
from bomb ass makeup.
Uh, okay, let's see. I
You're like,
don't know. My God, like it's so sad. Like you'd think that this would be an easy question to answer. I guess I like work. Work is one. Yeah, I had a productive day at work. So yeah, there you go. Work.
oh, celebrate
Yeah.
small wins, right?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. But yeah, no, it was a good day. I'm kind of shocked that it's Wednesday already. But yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's give it a couple more minutes before we
Okay.
dive
Hold
into it.
on a sec. I don't know if this is going to affect anything, but hold on. I'm getting a call and it looks important. Hold on.
Hey Sam, so these are actually ones that Sam just commented on my earrings. So these are earrings that Alejo bought me for Christmas. He replaced the ones, I don't know what happened to them. I had like the larger ovioids and he replaced them, and I'm really glad that he did because I used to wear the hell out of them. These are my favorite earrings. Um, so hi. Mars is going to be right back. But I'm telling everybody that this is gonna be a slightly shorter this is gonna be a slightly shorter live than last time, just because I'm dealing with a migraine. I don't feel great, so I'm really looking forward to like laying down again. All good though. This is our and it sucks because this is we were going to talk a lot about Black History Month. This entire chat was dedicated solely to Black History Month and celebrating Black joy and ways that we can do that. So so we're just going to wait for Marcella to hop back on the call. But what are you guys celebrating today? If anybody's got anything that they're really proud of, feel free to share it while I wait for Marcella to get back on the call. Ah! Sam says, I love that the tone of this year seems to be celebrating joyful history, not just trauma. That's the thing. It is. Mars is jumping back on. But Sam, you're right. It is. We
Whew.
so much. So Sam just commented that she thinks it's great that we're celebrating uh, for Black History Month. We're really celebrating Black joy and not just trauma. Um, and I think that that's really important. So why don't we kind of just jump into it?
Yeah, for sure. Sorry to leave. It was an emergency. I was like, oh, I'm getting a call and it seems important. Anyway, I am so sorry. That will not happen again because my family now knows that they can't call me at night or after 5, I guess. Okay. Anyway. All right. So, yes, to catch me up, yes, it's good to celebrate the good things. Yeah, like Black History is every day, obviously, but it's kind of telling that like I read this like joke, I guess, but it was a joke, but like it was basically like lamenting the fact that Black History happens on like the shortest month of the year, and that I never had realized that it is, a reality that we must contend with. But anyway, so sorry, I'm still flustered. I'm just talking. You talk, Tanya. You're much more better at this than I am right now. Like,
why don't we just jump back in? Why don't we just jump into it? So this
okay, you jump us in. You dive in, Tanya.
The shortest. So Black Youth Collective YYC says the shortest and the coldest month of the year.
Right? I know.
The shortest and coldest month of the year is Black History Month. But we were talking about celebrating Black joy and learning about the struggles and so many different social justice movements are rooted in Black liberation, and it's really, really important to acknowledge that when we look at feminism, when we look at the LGBTQ community, when we look at different communities and the way that we have been able to organize, so much of that has been inspired and started by Black liberationists. And we understand, at least I would hope that now we're at a point in time where we understand that liberation in general is inherently tied to Black liberation, right? Excuse me. And so just for anybody who is coming in a little bit late, I have a migraine. I'm not feeling well. So bear with me if I'm not myself. We're going to go through this, and this is a really, really important live for us. This is a really important live for us because this was the live that we had dedicated to Black History Month. So it was exclusively dedicated to Black History Month.
We're going to talk about influential people and not just in like in Canada and the world, but also importantly like for Latinx history, because as we were talking about it earlier, and I think that this is a reality for a lot of us from Latin cultures. We have a lot of influence from Black people. Like the Caribbean, you go there. Even in Guatemala, there's Livingston. It's like a port in the God. Never eat. So it's on the east side of never eat shredded wheat. It's on the east side of Guatemala, and like it's beautiful, right? Because it's got a Caribbean vibe. It's gorgeous, and but I always say to my parents, because you don't really see too many Black people in Guatemala, but we do have Black people, obviously. But it sucks because, and my parents always argue with this because I'm like, why are they all living in like one specific part of the country? And they're like, they like it there, and I'm like, do they? That's like the same thing you guys say about like the indigenous people who live up in like the monte, like up like closer to like the volcanes and stuff. No, they like it there. Are you sure? It's not just because of discrimination,
They like it.
They like it there. They're close to the sun and the beach and the waves. I'm like, yeah.
Alex Cartier said, "Hi Mars."
Hey Mars.
For some reason, so I'm gonna try to play them.
Thank you. Wow, I am like the smartest person ever today. I swear. I don't know what's happening. Anyway,
don't even start. Oh, don't even start. I'm having
maybe the migraine is it like somehow jumped to me is what I'm thinking. Just kidding.
Contagious. Oh no.
Ready. Anyway, but yeah, so it was definitely one of those things that I think that we need to acknowledge is that a lot of Latino culture is influenced greatly by not just by, you know, indigenous people, but also by, you know, the enslaved people from Africa who were brought over due to enslavement and, you know, coercion. So when you look at places like Haiti and you look at places like the Dominican Republic, even Panama, which is part of Central America, there's a lot of Black people and there's a lot of culture mixed in with the indigeneity that we find there. And it's really amazing to me how genres like, you know, reggaeton, which is like super popular now, even in like the mainstream media, you know, were birthed by, you know, African musical concepts. So, and I mean, having said that, you know, you were talking earlier about how much of our own freedom as humans is tied in with Black liberation, but and because so much of it has been influenced, like all those movements were, you know, influenced by Black people before us. But I mean, they've also contributed like culturally. You know, later today we're going to talk about Black cinema and Black films that have meant a lot to you and to me. But I mean, it's just one of those things where like you don't like you really do have to realize how much we owe it to the Black community for the world that we live in. To be honest, so many of our expressions come from, you know, Black vernacular. So many of the things that we do, like foods, like culture, it all stems from, you know, Black people. So yeah, like I was saying earlier, as cheesy as it sounds, you know, Black History Month is every day. You know, when you really consider it.
It literally,
Yeah.
like, you can't, not I'm not like saying like, oh, we can't get away from it, but like honestly,
No, I get it.
the influence has been so profound in so many different aspects of our lives that, like, I mean, to pretend that we can only be talking about this, like, you know, 1 month out of the year is like super short-sighted, you know. So for example, if you come over to my house, I always have that music playing, right? And everybody knows, like, I've got like my salsas, I've got my boogaloos playing. I'm on this like mariachi kick right now, which
Ooh, I love that. Yes, yes, yes.
like, you guys remember Ready J? As an aside, R&B singer, Chicano R&B singer who used to be a member of Cumbia Kings with Eddie
Oh,
Quintanilla.
oh yeah. I remember the Kumbaya Kings. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Oh.
he's got this like new mariachi album out, and it's not terrible. Anyway,
Okay, good.
I'm like on one, but like normally, you know, if I'm doing like my Saturday morning limpieza, you know,
Yeah.
when, you know, growing up, like our moms would always like wake us up at like 8 o'clock in the morning and
My
be like,
sister in my in my case. Yeah.
would put on like their and get house discos or like, you know,
Yes, yes.
and Sam said we should make a playlist. We definitely should make a playlist.
Oh, we would, and it would have so many things. Because that's the thing with Latinos is like, because we are not a monolith, right? Because we're an ethnicity and not a race. There is such an interesting, you know, melange of like different cultures and different everything. So yes, definitely our music is quite varied.
Yeah.
Like,
So
you know, yeah.
you know, so now like you come over and I'm always listening to like Boogaloo, right? Which is um and it's like it feels good. You know that song I Like It Like That? By
Yes, yes, yes.
Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like a sexy song. It's like, you know, you dance it a little bit slower, you want to dance it a little bit closer, like you want to like really
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge fan of Boogaloo. And
Yeah.
Boogaloo was born in it was born in East Harlem, right? And it was, you know, there was like a huge influx of like Cuban immigrants in the
Mm-hmm.
United States and Puerto Ricans who, you know, are Americans, que no
Mm-hmm.
se que se dejen de mierdas. So into East Harlem, right, which is Spanish Harlem, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
is like, you know, you go a few blocks down and you have like a huge Black neighborhood, right, because it's Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
So you have jazz musicians and you have who are hearing sounds like son montuno and Mozambique and like all of these
Mm-hmm.
distinctly, you know, Caribbean sounds, right? These like, you know, Latin Caribbean sounds, and
Mm-hmm.
start jamming together. And the cool thing about Boogaloo was that you didn't have to be a classically trained musician in order to
Mm-hmm.
play well. Some of our sounds that we know as like rumba, um,
Mm-hmm.
played in these really big bands accompanied by these like philharmonic orchestras, right? And but some of these musicians were born in you know, they were born in more impoverished conditions where classical musical training was not accessible. So they're teaching themselves to play, and it's like it's relatively easy to jump into one of these like ensembles, right? One of these boogaloo and start playing and make something really beautiful, you know. So when I think about, there's a song called Acid by Rainbow, right? It's a really, really famous song, and it starts off really slow with that dun 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 dun, and then there's you know, and it's just like people start slowly making their way in, and then you hear the brass, and it's like beautiful collection of coming in by all these like different musicians from these different backgrounds, you know. And that there, you know, even when we simplify it, right, you know, when we think about even like la clave, right, right, the key, that like, you know, percussion, that's rooted in blackness, right? That's like black beat, right? We start looking at the drums that we use, you know, when we start looking at the congas, right? When I talk to African people and they're listening to music, you know, when they're listening to like Chichi Peralta and they're like, oh, I love like the African drums in the beginning. I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, that's the conga. Yeah. 14-year-old Tanya didn't like draw the like.
Yes. But I mean, we're learning, we're growing. That's a thing. Yeah, don't, you know, like, yeah, she didn't know.
But it's an African drum. They recognized it correctly. Tanya didn't know better. 14-year-old Tanya was like,
exactly. Yeah, but you know, you're learning. Yeah.
And so like, you know, when we think about, you know, and then we think about the evolution of like popular Latin music, when we think about boogaloo, when we think about salsas, when we think about like Celia Cruz, right? When we think about Celia Cruz, who's like one of the biggest, like all-time biggest stars of Latin music, you know, was, for anybody who's never heard of her, if you come to my house, playing that shit all day long, all the time. Celia Cruz was a Cuban woman. She was like visibly like black and loud, and you know, she was charming.
Azúcar
in her music.
Yeah.
She was black joy, she was Latin joy, she was, you know, Celia Cruz was this like bigger than life character, and she would appear on Sesame Street with Big Bird.
She did, yeah.
El Sum Sum, the hummingbirds.
Yeah.
Like, she was so cool, and we her, and she had this career that spanned something like 50 years or 60.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
With her husband, by her side, with this like really tiny little black man, right? With he had his, I don't remember his name, but he used to lead, the band that he used to lead was called La Sonora Matancera, and she used to call him su cabecita de algodón, my little cotton head, because his hair was white, because he was an old man at
Pedro Knight.
Pedro Knight, that was his name, and his right, and it was like this little puff, and she loved this man, of
course, yeah,
of like one of those old like marriages, like that like beautiful, you know, love and devotion to your spouse. It was a beautiful pair. But she used to sing songs that you know, had that like really heavy African influence, right? And we hear that, right? So we hear songs like Burundunga, you know, those are like really, really black names. And you know, that they're talking about in that song. And you know, the way that she danced and the way that she moved and the way that she, you know, she would wear like the ¿cómo se dicen? Like the hair turbans. She'd always
yeah.
And you know, and she'd wear like the really loud wigs and stuff, and she was like really like, you know, that was the way that she carried herself, you know, was so like, you know, loving and loud. And you know, when we think about the music that she made, and it had such a profound effect on Latin music going forward, a lot of what we celebrate now is, you know, rooted in that culture. And And so it's important to celebrate that. You know, when you come over to my house, I'm always playing that. You know, Black history is every day. And we're going to keep reiterating this as
because it's the truth. But like,
is
have,
every and
but having talked about Celia Cruz, like, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, like Mariana Grajales Cuello and, you know, like Marcos Maceo, like you were talking about that, like those were two names from Cuba that I had never heard of, you know, and when you're talking about them, because that's the thing, like your family, like I loved when you told me that you were named after the revolutionary, you know, Tanya. I never knew that about you until you told me that. And I was like, that is so fucking bomb. And like, that's, yeah, and like that's the thing when you were talking about like Mariana Grajales Cuello, like it's a person that I'd never really heard of, even though I grew up with a lot of Cuban friends, you know, like my parents had a lot of friends who were Cuban. It was a story that I never heard. So would you please regale the tale to me again?
so so Mariana Grajales Castillo, or sorry, Mariana
Cuello.
Cuello, sorry.
Mm-hmm. No, it's okay.
As the mother of Cuba. She was a woman who, she was the wife of a general. She was born in Santiago de Cuba. She was the daughter of, she was mulatto, and she was the daughter of Dominican parents. And her husband, Jose, and her son, Antonio Maceo Grajales, they went on to serve as generals in the Cuban army to fight for Cuban liberation from the Spanish Empire and to liberate Black slaves. Mm-hmm. But and this was a woman who was like badass. You know, this was a woman that when her sons were fighting on the front lines, when her husband was fighting on the front lines, and there was like bullets, you know, like flying past her. This was a woman who dedicated herself and her daughter-in-law to taking care of like wounded soldiers, and she would go in there with like her fucking machete, you know.
I know, and you told me that. I was like, that's bomb. Yeah, like I mean, I can't do that, but I admire women that can.
Just to pull these men out who were wounded and to their wounds. If that is not the most badass thing you have ever heard,
oh, for sure, yeah.
There's a really famous revolutionary, Jose Marti, who when he saw her enter the battlefield to rescue her son Antonio, who had been wounded, he says, and I quote, "Fáciles son los héroes con tales mujeres. It's easy to be heroes with women such as these."
Such an amazing quote, yeah.
That's when we think about, female revolutionaries, you know, often we think, you know, in this country, we think about women who, you know, we think about like Rosie the Riveter, right? Who was like, all of our husbands went off to war. And so now we have to like hold the fort at home. But we have never been like that, right? Our history and Black history, like women handle shit, right? Women went on to lead like entire platoons, right? Entire, you know, factions of the Black Panther Party. Our contributions have been recognized, right? Right? Like we get like so somos
indigenous. I think that comes more from our indigeneity though, right? Because I mean, you look at indigenous soldiers like las Zapatistas, and you know, in the Guatemalans in the highlands. Like I think that does come from indigeneity. It does not come from our Spanish side. You know, like
when our husbands go off to war, what do? We're like, okay, I'm gonna get my gun, and we all go, right? We strap our bullets on, agarramos a los. We're like, okay, we'll get coffee when we get there. That's how we roll, right?
Yeah.
How we roll. Joe always jokes that he feels really safe having a Latino girlfriend because if shit goes down, I'm gonna jump right in there.
that was you, a dramatization of you, like in the thick of it. Yeah. Girl, hold my earrings. Just hold my earrings.
But you know. So like when we think about the contributions of these women, and they were huge. This is a woman who helped liberate Cuba. That's Sam says you're on my team for the apocalypse.
Yeah. Not me, like for real. We were talking about this earlier with other friends, and I'm like, I would be the first to die. So leave me here to die. It is fine. Eat me, zombies. sacrificial lamb.
But, you know, when we think about the contributions of Black women, um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the mother of Cuba, la madre de
Mm-hmm.
Cuba era negra.
Mm-hmm.
That's a beautiful legacy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, and so Celia Cruz, you know, she mentions Maceo, who was like a Black general, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who liberated Cuba. And, you know, when you talk to Cubans, they're really proud of that Blackness, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're there's a marked difference in the way that we celebrate frijoles. Get off the table. There's a
Nobody else.
there's a marked difference in the way there's a marked difference in the way that we celebrate our heroes, right?
Yeah.
Cuba is really proud of El Negro Maceo, right? Um, in Haiti, you go to Haiti, which, by the way, if anybody's curious, Haiti liberated Santo Domingo, right? So we talk about how much we owe to, you know, Black people within Latinidad. Haiti,
Mm-hmm.
Santo Domingo was literally liberated by the neighboring state, because remember, Haiti and the Dominican Republic are like
Neighbors.
the island is split in two, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no like actual border. They were just like this French side, Spanish side, and,
But
and you
for
said
real, yeah.
that
Yeah.
that like excuse me, for the amount that Black people have done within Latinidad, Latinos have like a really piss poor way of being like, thank you for your sacrifices. So like Santo Domingo was liberated by Haiti, which was the first um, state of free men, right?
Mm-hmm.
Haiti liberated itself from
Mm-hmm.
slavery, right? From its
January 1st was so the Haitian Revolution ended on January 1st. We were talking about this earlier. I was like, wasn't it like a few weeks ago? Yeah. Sorry, just to
yeah,
interrupt.
actually though.
Yeah.
So then they're like, okay, we're free. We're gonna go free like our neighbors, and and so they do. And then now, like you go to the Dominican Republic, and there's so much like anti-Blackness and racism
Mm.
within there. I mean, there was like a Haitian there was a Haitian genocide. Uh,
Oh yes, yeah, yeah,
right? I believe it was the 1950s,
yeah. Hmm.
or maybe it was the 1940s, where people who were suspected of being Haitian were killed, right? Because they wanted to
Hmm.
like clean the bloodline, right? General Trujillo, who was a dictator,
Hmm.
you know, he used to like try to lighten his skin. You know, we look at the way that we try to erase Blackness from our history books, and
Hmm.
I don't understand it, because there is literally so much of it. Like
And
you're
that's why
writing all
no,
history.
but that's the thing. It's because we're missing so much of our history because we neglect the indigenous side, we neglect the black side, we neglect, all of the cultural aspects, and we center so much on whiteness. And that is why it's important not just to, think about these things 1 month a year. It's important to really look at it in context, right? And you're right, like it is an erasure. It is like simply put, it is an erasure because we as Latinos carry so much shame when it comes to the color of our skin. And like it would be easy to say that, you know that we are, one people, but the thing is, like, we're such a rich culture because we've come from so many different influences. There's like the black influence, there's the Asian influence, because, like, believe it or not, like, there's like a huge Asian influence in all of Latin America. Koreans in Guatemala, Chinese in Cuba. Like, it's a thing, right? And Japanese in Brazil. Like, it's crazy how much our ethnicity has been influenced by other cultures, and to ignore the enslavement part of it, just as we do in Canada and the US, it is like a detriment to, like, the history that we tell people, because it's not a complete truth. It's not the full legacy, right? So it is really, it is something that we have to contend with, and it is something that we have to be aware of. And I'm happy that you bring that up, because there is a lot of shame for I think for Latinos when it comes to our or Black ancestry. And I don't know, well, I do know, but like it simplified, it sucks, right? Like the fact that we are so embarrassed of like our history that we don't even like to acknowledge. And it is quite sad, but I think it's just it's a fact of life, unfortunately, that there will always be that racism. We just have to fight against it, you know?
Well, I mean, ideally, there isn't always going to be that racism, but for right now,
I love how cynical I'm being.
like, have to operate.
No, but you're right. Yeah.
And like, you know, oh my goodness, being so cute.
Oh, she's being so needy. I love it.
So you're right. We do have this like really bizarre erasure, and that's why we keep reiterating like Black history is every day.
Mm-hmm.
Black culture every day, and Black culture is not something that is for consumption. It's something that should be in the same way that we like revere stories of our ancestors and our sacrifices. We should revere these stories of like Black excellence as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
So many sacrifices that have been made in the name of Black excellence, in the name of contribution for the betterment of a society that is for the betterment of a society that is so ungrateful, right? um, and it costs a lot for POC to make these kinds of contributions, because we have to fight back, not just because we're breaking new ground, but just like our right to exist within those spaces is challenged so like heartily, right? So so yeah, so when we think about Black history and the way that it affects our lives, one of the things that we were talking about, you and I, Mars, is um excuse me, how we have to stop focusing on Black suffering, and we have to be
fuck.
able and be willing to celebrate that Black that Black joy, right? And Black and that's so important. But it's also important to recognize that Black excellence was born out of a lot of pain and a lot of suffering in some instances, right? So, for example, you were talking about the last time we did this last week. You did this wonderful, really wonderful bit on Marie José.
Oh, right, Angelique. Yes. So, knowing that you're going to bring her up, I actually did some research. So, yes. So, actually, like, her name is Marie-Joseph Angelique. Originally, she was Marie-Joseph. She was born in Portugal. The Angelique was added on to her after her enslaver died and left her to his wife, who renamed her Angelique after her daughter. So, or her dead daughter, I should say. So, her story is quite complicated. In Canada, we like to pretend that we didn't really have enslaved peoples. However, it was a legal institution in Canada that existed for over 200 years, which I did not know it lasted that long. I knew we did have enslaved peoples, but to look at it in terms of the numbers, 200 years is way too long for a country that likes to pride itself on its goodness. I love Canada. It's I grew up here, but to ignore its history, and that erasure of like the bad things that Canada did, is to just completely ignore the truth of it, right? And it's important to look at Canada from all perspectives, and that's why I think it's important. And I know I keep saying this every every week. Wow, I'm so out of it. But I say this every week. Alberta's curriculum, and not just Alberta's curriculum, but Canada's curriculums really do need to include more of the racialized, history. And that's the really cool thing about, and we'll talk about them later because we're going to actually highlight some really cool blogs that people should follow, and Twitters and stuff like that. But one of the really nice things is that there is a resource, and it's called the Alberta Anti-Racism Committee. Oh gosh, I always forget this. Anyway, it's AB anti-racism and education, sorry. And their initiative is really, really great because what they're trying to do is they're trying to incorporate anti-racism and, racialized history into the curriculum here in the province, which I think is super important. So going back to Marie-Joseph Angélique. So she was accused of setting fire to Montreal with her lover, who was a white man. He was because she had no rights as a slave or as an enslaved person. She made the ideal scapegoat for the crime when it seemed as though she might not have been the one that set fire to Montreal. But she died on June 21st, 1734 in Montreal. So this is quite a while ago. But it's really interesting because she now stands as like a symbol of Black resistance and freedom, because what she did, when, she was not allowed to have her freedom, is she threatened her enslaver. She threatened everyone within earshot, which is why she made such a credible scapegoat, because she said that she was going to burn down their house to them. Like, you won't set me free, I'm going to burn down your house, which I can totally understand when you look at it from the perspective of somebody doesn't have any freedom, doesn't have, any free will, and you're trying to get your freedom and you ask for it and they keep denying you that basic right to humanity. Of course, it made sense that she would make those claims, or those threats, I should say. So fast forward to, a fire breaks out in the old port of Montreal, and, the fire leveled Montreal's Merchants Quarter, I should say. So she made the ideal scapegoat. So when she finally was caught, they caught her and her boyfriend, I guess, or her partner, Claude Thibault, and they were basically just tried for what they did. She never said that he helped her. She also maintained that she was innocent, but reading up on it, like, Canada was pretty barbaric. Like, the thing is, hold on, I'm gonna find that part where they tried her. She was basically tried to be hanged and tortured. So they beat her legs, and it was while beating that she finally, I guess, they coerced her into admitting to something that she said always that she hadn't done. So, she was burned alive, and prior to that, she was tortured. So when you really think about that, this poor woman was brutalized. And who knows if she did it, right? Like, that still is up in the air because, they basically saw her as like the perfect person to use as a scapegoat. So yeah, so learning about that was very interesting. And it definitely puts it into perspective, how Canada does have quite, and I mean, we know this with Indigenous, with Indigenous peoples here in our country. But we also like to pretend that, we are better than the US. But when you really consider, like, the fact that we had enslavement for 200 years, the fact that, in when they destroyed Africville out in the Maritimes, and that was like a thriving Black community. When you hear about Abbott, I think it was, anyway, the AB Anti-Racism Committee, they have it. But it was like this entire quarter of Black Canadians who came up from San Francisco, and, they basically ghettofied it. They said that it was unlivable for new immigrants, or for anybody who was white, I guess, because it was basically just known as like the Black Quarter, and immigrants lived there. So it's really interesting when you consider that we like to pride ourselves on being so tolerant and lovely, when the reality is we haven't really been up to snuff. So, but I mean, I think that that's the theme for tonight. As much as we're trying to really drive home the fact that Black excellence and really celebrating Black culture, unfortunately, like you said earlier, a lot of that is tied together with a lot of suffering. And when you consider that's a tragic legacy, like, not to diminish from the triumphs that they've had as a community, but that's horrible. Like, how much can we brutalize like a community, and I know I really can't speak to that because I myself am not Black, but as somebody who sees herself as somebody who is allied to the Black struggle, it really, really it makes me want to be better and do better, and really speak out against the injustices that I see daily. And I know I'm not alone in that. Like, I know there's a lot of people who want to do better and be better, because these are human lives at stake. And we've talked about this before, the racial trauma that comes with reliving racist experiences. And imagine just being somebody descended from an enslaved person. Like, the trauma that you relive, just whenever people brings it up, it's yeah. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent.
I feel that too. Like, I've got two kids. For anybody who doesn't know, I'm the mother of two children, who I love with all of my heart. And it's the same thing. I feel the burden of responsibility of educating these kids because my kids are white passing. So they're never going to know colorism in the way that I have known it, or in the way that my family has known it. But and so there's a lot of responsibility in that. And so you're right. There is a huge burden of responsibility on parents of white passing children to make sure that we are educating in them in such a way that they don't take that for granted, because it's really, really easy to forget. I mean, I have family members who are very, very light skinned, who like to insert themselves in these conversations, who can be really, really harmful and sort of take that for granted, right? And so I feel like it's really important to remind everybody, especially Latinos, there are so many different like dynamics that are like kind of at odds with each other, where we like to play the oppression Olympics. So just as a reminder to Latinos that yes, we are not a monolith, right? But we can be united under the culture, while still being able to recognize the way that some of us might have it a little bit harder than than the rest of us. And it's still really, really important to acknowledge Black history within Latinidad. It is imperative that if we're going to move forward as a culture and as a people, that we need to be able to acknowledge that honestly, right? But so it's 6:18 right now. I think we need to wrap this up. We've got a few Instagram accounts, Mars, that you want to tell people about. If you are not already following them, make sure that you do. What have you got?
So for sure, GFDX is a big one. Am I saying it right? Hold on. I might not be saying it right. So it's GFX_Prince. This account is lovely. I've definitely learned a lot from them. They're getting their doctorate in sociology, and they are Black American. So they definitely have a really unique perspective. And I think someone wants to come into my apartment. They keep knocking, but I don't know who it would be. So I'm just gonna keep ignoring it. Anyway. Chinga tu madre, siguen tocando, no sé quién es.
Leave it alone.
Okay, anyway.
They'll be there.
Yeah, anyway, so GFX Prince is a big one. Ali Henny is another one. Tanya introduced me to that account. She is lovely. She's a mother. She is very outspoken, and I really admire her and respect her, because she doesn't take any crap from anyone. And a lot of people go into her DMs and try to tell her to be kinder and sweeter and gentler, like a lot of people do with Black women in particular. And she handles it like a champ. So I definitely recommend her. I also recommend Onyx Sachi. So she is 2 times Miss Nude Canada. So she definitely, I really enjoy her account, because like seriously, she talks a lot about, her work. And, we have to work, I think, as women, especially, really hard to not put women, especially women of color, up to purity standards and what we respect, like respectability politics as well. So I really like that she is, a Black Canadian who is, really proud of her body, and and showcases it, and I love her stuff. Another Instagram account that we've been following since the very beginning, and I can tell you're in pain because your eyes are so sad right now, so sorry, is Michikana, or I can never pronounce it, so Mishana, there you go, Mishana. Oh, anyway, I will spell it out. It is Misichan, and she is a clothing designer here from Edmonton. We've been following her since ever. very lovely, very talented. She takes African prints and she makes beautiful clothing here for the modern woman. Another one that we really we mention all the time is the Alberta Anti-Racism Education Committee. They are doing the Lord's work, really, in my opinion, because they are trying to encompass every different group, be it nationality or ethnicity. They are really trying their hardest to demonstrate how varied our history is, that it is not just, the French Canadian or the, British invasion of Turtle Island. So they're really doing a really great job, and I really admire the three women that run that, two of whom are Black. And then I really recommend Black Women United Edmonton. They recently released a post. I know we've talked about the counter protests the last two lives that we've had, and they recently came out saying that they didn't support the counter protest because of all of the horrible things that the incidents against the Black Muslim women. Oh God, they've all been women. Sorry, it just hit me right now, that have been attacked at the like on LRT and at Southgate. So I really admire the fact that they were one of the bigger platforms to come out and say it. And granted, there have been a lot of people that have been saying it since it was announced. Kanisha was one of them, and like it's good that people are speaking out, especially when they are racialized. They're aware of the dangers that they face, and so they are one of the ones that I really admire and encourage people to follow. Black Alberta is another one. They are really amazing. They're always posting really good perspectives, and the thing that I like about that page in particular is that they always give room for us to have conversations. So I've had a few really interesting dialogues with people in the comments. I've never found that it gets out of hand. I think people understand that it is like an open space, but I think they also know that it is there for communication and not for confrontation. Also, the Black Youth Collective.
Just to point out, we'll be linking to all of these different accounts in the description
Stories.
Yeah, in the stories as well.
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions or if they're worried that they might be missing one.
Today's live, man. Today's live. So many things. My sister calls. You have a migraine. Weird. The cat.
Oh man. Well, okay, so everybody, I think we should just wrap it up. Everybody.
Yeah, it's been awkward. We're so sorry. Did my makeup all special.
You look beautiful. I hope you.
Thank you. Thank you. I made it special. And like, there's still like a few. I'm so sorry, but we will link them up. Also, I don't want to keep you longer because you do look like you're in a lot of pain.
We really need to lay down. So, thank you so much for tuning into this Instagram live.
Yeah, feel better. And we're so sorry. Yeah, this was weird. There must be a full moon. If anyone knows, I blame it on that. Also, it's Valentine's Day. Around the corner. I think it's Mercury retrograde's another one. So many excuses. All right. Anyway.
Thank you so much.
I love you. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.